Hello and welcome to another episode of A Fresh Perspective here on Heaven Earth Thinking. Today we're continuing on in the book of Luke, Luke chapter 10. We're going to be looking at verses 17 through 20. The 72 returned with joy and said, "Lord, even the demons submit to us in your name." He replied, "I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. I have given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions and to overcome all the power of the enemy. Nothing will harm you. However, do not rejoice that the spirits submit to you, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven." As we look at this small section, again, what do we see here with a fresh perspective?
Well, I think this is the reality, right, of what happens in Christianity, right? We get to experience the power, the authority, right, the love, the things of God. And Jesus, I love it, because when you read this section, you really got to go to the end of it and read verse 20 first and say, hey, here's the bottom line. Don't rejoice in all of these things. Rejoice in people who get to go to heaven. Rejoice in the idea that you're doing all of this stuff to get people in heaven. And it just makes me wonder today, are we doing these things to get people in heaven, right? And if we aren't, is that maybe why we're not being able to do those things?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's important to look at that end section and to give us perspective on these few verses because they're returning with joy. In the first verse says they're so excited, Lord, even the demons submit to us in your name. And yet at the end he's saying that's not what's important. The power I'm giving you, the power that you have in me, that's not what's important. What's important is that your names are written in heaven, that there's an end game. Yes, what's done on earth is important, but what's more important is that your souls are saved and you're ready for what's to come in a new heaven and a new earth, and that's the end game. He wants us to have that in mind. Like you said, what's important is about people coming to know Jesus. The power, that's just a means that God is able to display his glory and to accompany the message of salvation to get people to pay attention, but that's not the end game. The end game is to come to know Jesus.
Yeah, so I think you have to understand, right? This is not a suggestion, this is a command. Don't do it. Right? Do not rejoice in all of the things of Jesus. Rejoice in Jesus. And again, I think sometimes we get way off track and we're caught up in all of the different things, whether it's the healing, whether it's the, casting out of demons, whether it's the speaking in tongues, whether it's the financial aspects of the kingdom, whatever it is, we start getting super excited, right? Because I'm getting this, or I'm getting this, or I get to do this. But all of that is meant to get people to heaven, right? So if you're using your gifts, the gifts that God has given you, and that's not what your end goal is, how am I going to use my gift of administration, my gift of service, teaching, whatever it is? How am I going to use my gift to get people to heaven? If that's not what you're doing, then you're going against a command. Do not rejoice in this, but rejoice in the fact that I'm giving you all this ability so that you can do something for the kingdom. You can get people to hopefully a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ.
Absolutely. And then as we look at this section, we also have verse 19 talking about the authority that Jesus is giving these 72 and also to us. What do we see in that verse? And in context, of course, with this command.
Yeah, well, again, what Jesus says, and this is where people take it, way out of context, right? When they feel like, well, nothing can hurt me if I'm a Christian. I can do whatever I want to do. That's not at all. The context is Jesus sent the 72 out to specifically do something. First of all, pave the way for him to come to these cities, right? But second, to heal the sick, right? And to cast out demons, right? So when we look at this whole thing, he said, yeah, nothing is going to hurt you. But there was, a definite thing for the 72 going out, not necessarily for us. If God hasn't commissioned you, if Jesus hasn't said, Timothy, go to here and do this, he doesn't have to protect you. But here he does. But again, it all is in the context of, but that's not what you rejoice in.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think another example of when Jesus sent people specifically would be Paul in the New Testament later on when he is told by God that he needs to go to a certain place and that nothing's going to harm him, that God's going to protect him. That was a specific example, again, like this, where it's, hey, I have a mission for you, nothing is going to harm you here. And I think that many of us may have those missions at different times. The Lord says, listen, I need you to do this. I'm going to take care of the details. But then I think too often we go and we take these verses way out of context and just think, well, all my life is this mission for Jesus, so clearly nothing's going to hurt me because he's given me authority over everything. I think we need to be careful that we're not, again, rejoicing in that. We're focused on the mission of saving souls, and then we are taking things in proper context. So when God says, hey, I'm going to do this for you, we can trust him that he's going to do that, but we don't take his word and then twist it to fit whatever we want, whenever we want.
Yep, that's exactly right.
So we hope that you've been encouraged by this and challenged by this, and that you'll join us next time for another episode of A Fresh Perspective here on Heavenward Thinking.